In this episode of It Came From My Side of the Laundry Room, I want to look at some books that are very special, and we're going to grab a fistful of Joe, so stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to It Came From My Side of the Laundry Room. And in this week's episode, I want to take a look at some books that are very special to me. So, here's the shelf life. Here we are in the Christmas season. Unfortunately, I don't have as many Christmas things in my collection as I did for Halloween. So I was thinking what I could possibly show, and it hit me. Now, this isn't a reflection on any of my Christmases, but these were something that my grandfather got for his Christmases. And take a look at these. I have a bunch of these, and they're old books that he was given as gifts. Now, this one is from, dated to him, December 25th, 1922. My grandfather was born in 1917, so he would be about 5 years old. But this book is called The Adventures of Johnny Chuck, and it's part of the bedtime storybook collection. Ooh, and the copyright for this is actually 1913. Wow, that's amazing. Holding something in my hand that's 105 years old. Now, I have these on a special shelf, so they're not just hanging around here in the laundry room. But when I was a kid, my grandfather actually made a library card for me that I could check these books out from him and read them. And a lot of them I did read, but I, for the life of me, can't remember anything about them. But they had these old, I think, what do you call those? Like tin printed illustrations. We'll look at a couple more, and then we'll look at another book here. A couple of them. Like I said, I have about 24 of them, all of different series. And if anyone wonders where I got my love of anthropomorphic animals from, I mean, it must have been a trait that my grandfather shared as well, because a lot of the books are from this series and of different animal stories. And this one doesn't say who it's from, but looking at a lot of them, I mean, they're from all different people. Aunts, uncles, family, friends, I assume, his parents. So this must have been a book series that he really loved when he was growing up, that everyone knew that it was a good gift to get him for his birthday or Christmas. So these are ones that he got for Christmas. And like I said, he got this Christmas in 1922. Now here's another one. The Tale of Ferdinand Frog, Sleepy Time Tales. Now the cover's not as grand as the one we just looked at, but it does have a little bit more color in the pictures. And I love looking at these old pictures. All these different animals. And this one is from December 25th, 1925, from Santa Claus. See if it has a copyright. 1918. And I believe these books were actually used, because some of them have like prices in the front of them. I mean, 5 cents and things written in pencil. But here is Old Mr. Crow plays a joke on Mr. Frog. Granddaddy Beaver appeals to Mr. Frog. But this artwork is amazing, and just the fact that these books are over 100 years old, I mean, that really makes me feel good that I have something of my grandfather's as well. Now, these are ones that I grew up with knowing the most of, and that's Uncle Wiggily. Uncle Wiggily in the Country, I think, is actually the last part of the series, and this was from Mamaw, which was my great-grandmother, and I've never met her, but this one's from 1923. And this art, they add some greens more in it, along with the reds. Copyright 1916. Oh, I'm sorry, the last one, at least according to this, was Uncle Wiggily in the Woods. And Uncle Wiggily, I mean, was a board game I grew up playing when I was in kindergarten. And seeing these on the shelf shortly after was what sparked my interest in wanting to read them. Sorry, I'm just reading to see what this creature is supposed to be that Uncle Wiggily is interacting with. Because I don't know if it's supposed to be a lizard or a devil. Who knows with books back then. But Uncle Wiggily, the old gentleman rabbit, Uncle Wiggily Longears, I believe is his full name. This plate has blues in it. This is 102 years old. That just blows my mind. Like I said, I grew up with these books. And I love these old solicitations for, these are the, I guess for more younger readers, the Uncle Wiggily picture books. Hope that didn't come across on the mic. Tummy rumbling there. But, I mean, they're in pretty good shape. I mean, they've been well loved for their entire life. But like I said, I take very good care of them in a special enclosed shelf. Here's another one from Santa Claus in 1921. This is Jackie and Petey Bow Wow. And these were like a collection of, I mean, they were characters, but Uncle Wiggily did appear in these as well. And the copyright on this is 1912. Because the book series, the bedtime series, you have bedtime animal stories, and those jumped around and included Uncle Wiggily bedtime stories, because they're numbered here 1 to 28 in Uncle Wiggily. It's like 1, 2, 3 of the bedtime animal stories, then number 4 kicks off Uncle Wiggily, then back to 5, up here 6, and it just bounced back and forth because they all shared the same universe, which is really super cool. Here's the dog in the circus. I mean, some of these pages are still very white for the age. Here's another picture. But the last book I'll share with you, not to bore you any longer, is Uncle Wiggily's Travels. And this was given to my grandfather in 1920, so he is 3 years old. And I would assume this is probably the first book that he had gotten. There's Uncle Wiggily and a squirrel person. And the copyright on this one, 1913. And this I found interesting. I'll read this. It says, the stories herein contained appeared originally in the Evening News of Newark, New Jersey, where, so many children and their parents were kind enough to say, they gave pleasure to a number of little folks and grown-ups also. Permission to issue the stories in book form was kindly granted by the publisher and editor of the news, to whom the author extends his thanks. So, I mean, I'm ignorant on the fact, but I find it very neat that they published probably a chapter a night or a week or whatever in the newspaper of stories like this. It just goes to show you where newspapers have fallen, you know, that they used to be a source of entertainment and news. Look at the yellows on that. It's an interesting color they chose, yellows and greens. Here's reds. Look at this big crocodile trying to get Uncle Wiggily on top of that giant mushroom. But like I said, I don't have a lot of Christmas things to share, so I thought it'd be interesting just to share what Christmas was like in the 1920s, getting books like this from family members and Santa alike. Anyway, check out a commercial and we'll be back with G.I. Joe. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the commercial. Now, let's grab a fistful of Joes. Yo, Joe! Okay, like with every fistful of Joes, I got my container here. This is a different one than what I usually grab from. And it's got Joes from different eras, from the 80s till more recently in the 2000s. So let's grab a handful here. And we might be surprised to grab some other 3 3/4 figures that I have that aren't Joe, but I keep them in the Joe universe here. Oh, I see a couple of them. See a couple of the same character too. Let me grab another handful because during the 90s and early 2000s, it seemed like they just reproduced the crud out of a lot of popular characters. So I have a lot of different variations. So let's see who we have here. We have Sergeant Misha Zubenkoff from the October Guard. Now, I always loved the October Guard from the comics. They were the Russian equivalent of G.I. Joe. Of course, they didn't have as many members. I think there were only 5 or 6 of them. But let me get him all of his gear here. I'll check the file card to see what year this exactly was released. But this was a later release, way before the 25th anniversary ones came out. But it shares one of the traits, and that's to have like the bandolier separate. And he has this hat with the October Guard Russian star on it that comes off. He has a bayoneted AK-47. But I don't remember much of this character in particular. This was a toy I actually picked up at a local vintage toy store back when I got really into collecting Joes in probably the early 2000s. He was a secondary member of October Guard. I was going to say I didn't remember him from a lot of the original comics. I mean, he was in the later ones, I assume. But it said he joined after a lot of the October Guard had perished at the hands of Cobra. And I believe these were part of the comic book packs that they did, as well as this Scarlet figure, which really pays homage to her original sculpt. But they include the ponytail that was more akin to the cartoon and comic. The original toy didn't have a ponytail, it just had her with short hair. But she has the famous pistol there, slingshot in her back pocket, and she comes with her crossbow, and I'm not going to get all this out, but skis. I forget which issue number the comic that this is from, but I do remember the cover. I just wish I could remember the number. But always been a fan of Scarlet. I mean, growing up in the 80s, we had some very strong female role models, if you will, to look up to. And that's why I find it just kind of sad nowadays that people aren't finding these role models, apparently, and having to argue over including them. I mean, back then it just seemed normal. The ladies were there and they kicked just as much butt as the dudes on the team. And it just wasn't G.I. Joe, it was across the board. I mean, a lot of different cartoons had that female character, and just that's the way it was, and it was part of our worlds, our lives, and I never thought twice about it. I mean, that women could be an adventurer or a hero just as much as a man. So things definitely had changed, I guess. Excuse me while I drink some coffee. Okay, now here is another comic pack. This is Short Fuse. And what's different about him than the original? I mean, he's in the green suit, green uniform like the original figure, but he has sunglasses on, which was how he appeared a lot in the comic book. Comes with his mortar, a pistol, and a backpack that's on the floor now. Anyway, so this is Short Fuse with his sunglasses, which was more how I was used to seeing him, because a character like that wasn't in the cartoon very long. A lot of the green shirts didn't make it to the cartoon past the miniseries, as it felt like, but he was still in the comic and just had a different look to him. Here's Breaker. And I always hate it because it got to a point where it's Alvin Breaker Kibby, because someone else must have copyrighted the word or name Breaker, even though G.I. Joe was probably first, but they lost it and they had to include the real names with their code names to get the rights to it. But very reminiscent of the original mold. It probably is the old mold that they used a different colored plastic on, but the problem is, if they probably were the old molds, they very thick hands, very hard to hold their weapons. That's why I'm not putting the weapons in their hands to show you, because they're very chunky. I mean, which I guess could be an old mold because it's used and well grooved, that more plastic sits in there, makes it thicker. But I'm always afraid I'm going to break a thumb with this era of the Joe figures because of that. But he comes with an M16 and a cell phone, which I assume had something to do with the issue that he was in that was showcased in that pack. Now here is Lady J, and unfortunately she doesn't come with any of her javelins, but she came with a helmet. This is a complete new head sculpt that's more reminiscent of the cartoon, because she doesn't have the little hat on like the original figure did. But the uniform and body look to be a reproduction of her original body. It's just she doesn't have the hat on. So she has her... It's still not 100% accurate from the cartoon, but she came with this helmet because the comic that it was included in had her on a motorcycle. That looks pretty cool. Covers her eyes like that. Now this figure, not a fan of, but it came in a set, of course. But it's another Scarlet, but she has a karate gi on, which she is a karate master. Her whole family, I think her family owns a karate school. But it just makes her look so frumpy. She has the ponytail, which is a great addition, but it's just not a very good sculpt. I mean, her shoulders are very stocky in it. The waist here on the back is very weird looking. How it dips down there. And she comes with her crossbow and an M16. And here's what the file cards looked like in this era. A little bit different than the originals, what we're used to. It's got some barcode on the side. I wonder if I used a scanner app on my phone, if it would read anything. That would be interesting. Now here is another member of the October Guard. One of my favorites, and this is Horror Show. And he was the heavy weapons guy for the October Guard. And it's a pretty nice figure. Has nice sculpting for the quilted jacket. He has his tank hat on, cowl, or whatever you want to call it. And he came with this RPG, a pistol, and the AK-47 with bayonet. I don't have a file card for him, unfortunately. So either he came with like in a pack where they shared a file card and it's with somebody else, or I picked it up on the collector's market and it wasn't included. I can't remember. But he was always one of my favorite members of the October Guard. Just a great character, very humorous. If I could equate it to anything more in the modern era of entertainment, it would be like the Drax type of character from the movies, where he's funny because he doesn't get a lot of references, and he's just pal around, slap you on the back, not knowing his own strength kind of thing. And our last one is Snake Eyes. And this is from a comic pack, I believe, but this is one of my favorite sculpts. I love it. And like the 25th anniversary, this must be where they started getting the idea. His vest is not removable, but it is not sculpted on either. So it's probably put on before they let me double check. Yeah, it's definitely not removable. So they must have. But a lot of posability. And he comes with timber. But one of the things I love, and it's what the 25th anniversary really did well, was their scabbards for knives were empty that they could put a knife in. Even though I don't think he came with one. I don't have one in the bag, but that doesn't mean it didn't fall out in the box there. He comes with this wrist communicator or something. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, the sword fits in it. So maybe it's you can do a Wolverine thing with it. Because I don't see where it could attach to the back or anything to be a scabbard for the sword. But he also came with his Uzi, more of a Mac 10 design here. But what's cool is fold out stock. And when they started including things like that to bring, oh, and then this submachine gun. But when they started doing things like that different than the original line, when it started to feel like it just wasn't a reproduction, that's when it got exciting again. And some of the new characters that they released at that time, like one of my favorites was Swamp Rat, and I'm sure we'll get to him one day, but just a neat design that started popping up in this era where they were starting to create new molds and do different things, and just a very, believe me, not original. I mean, the originals are special, but this took it to the next step, which the 25th anniversary then did beautifully. But anyway, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Joes and October Guards members for this episode of Fistful of Joes. So, until next time, keep being rad, stay dorky. If you like what you saw, give a thumbs up. If you got something to say, leave a comment. And if you want to see more, please subscribe. But until next time, we'll see ya. Thank you for watching this episode presented by My Side of the Laundry Room. Please check out some of these other recommended videos, and if you enjoyed what you've watched, please hit the subscribe button. You can also follow on Twitter, like on Facebook, and read up on My Side of the Laundry Room at our blog. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep being rad and stay dorky.